You really have to be at the right season, the right time to get into coaching. High performance coaching is like you got to be locked in. You've got to be at a place where you've cleaned up some things in your health or you're just aware of them and you're able to really amplify who you are.
Well, hey, welcome back to the Amanda Kaufman Show. And today I'm joined by Lindsay Preston, PCC. She's the founder and CEO of Trust and Leadership Coaching, where she helps driven leaders move from overachievement to sustainable high performance. With over a decade of coaching and a 92% client success rate, with clients saying that they got all and more from working with her, Lindsay blends neuroscience, emotional intelligence, love that too, and whole person development to create measurable, lasting change. She specializes in guiding leaders at every stage, from rising stars, discovering their voice, to masterful executive leaders that are shaping culture and legacy. Known for her direct yet compassionate style, Lindsay creates high trust environments where leaders build resilience, clarity, and impact. She's passionate about revolutionizing leadership by proving that success and well being are not at odds, but are instead deeply connected. Lindsay, what a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, I've been geeking out, on you because you're, forgive me for saying it, such a nerd in such a beautiful way. And I love your emphasis as a coach on neuroscience and emotional intelligence and things like that to really help leaders activate. And just loving this idea that you're helping people move out of this work-life balance, oppositional conflict thing. I'm so curious, like what pointed you in the direction of neuroscience is the way and emotional intelligence is the way? How did you figure that out?
Yeah, so it started when I was first introduced to coaching. And my first impression of it was like Lucy on Peanuts, was like it lacked credibility and someone just put up a sign and anyone could do it. Because I had a psych background, but I knew I didn't want to. Yeah, exactly. I had a psych background, but I knew I didn't want to be a therapist. And so I played with HR for a while. And, anyways, when a coaching came my way, I was like, I don't know. And somebody said, well, I know a process that's neuroscience backed. And that was like, ding, ding, ding. Like, okay, we've got some credibility here, something that's like I can ground and root myself into that this is a real deal. And started the process as a client. And I was like, oh man, this is great. This is better than what I'd had in therapy at the time for many years. And it got me moving and grooving. So yeah.
That's amazing. That's so cool. I'm a high performance coach myself, and I would be lying if I didn't say that the fact is so science backed. And then later, the High Performance Habits book that was a peer reviewed, study of high performance in high achievers was a huge factor in me wanting to do that as a coaching certification. So that makes sense. What turned you on to psychology? And you said you like tried HR, like sounds like you've been a people person for a long time.
Yeah. So I always say things kind of chose me in the journey along the
Mm.
way. So when I went to college, I didn't know what I was going to major in. And I ended up taking an intro to psych class, and it was in a big lecture hall. And I end up, and they had like our student ID names with our grades. And I would go and I would look at it, and I was like, man, I'm making the highest grade in this class. Yet it doesn't feel like I'm ever studying. It feels really fun to me. And I was like, okay, I'm going to follow this breadcrumb. And so I ended up then majoring in it, again, not knowing where that would lead. Coming out of college, it's like, okay, what do I do with a psych degree now? Somebody had put in my ears like, why don't you try human resources? And I'm like, okay. So I start going into human resources and learn pretty quickly like the pros and cons of that. And then I just in that period I had a lot of life transition too and realized, okay, coaching's like this profession I didn't know existed, but it's the perfect one for me in that.
Yeah, I had such a similar experience in my own journey in the sense of like, what are you gonna do? I don't know, engineering, I'm good at math and stuff, right? And just like going through those motions to an extent, still showing up, right? And then being in the consulting world, I was always drawn to the company I worked for had core value around people development. Like we develop our people and we develop ourselves. And that ended up being kind of that accidental transition to like, ooh, people, I love people. And same thing, coaching was very much an accident, but beautiful one, one I would never turn away from. So talk to me a little bit about who you're working with now. It sounds like you're working with a lot of high achievers, high performers. What is it about working with this crowd that sparks you?
Yeah, so I want to kind of backtrack in that. And I've had a coaching business now for 11 years. And when I first started out, I worked with women in transition. And
Hmm.
so over the years, it was like, oh, like digging into these women, no matter what the transition was, if it was career or personal or whatever. And I really found that I loved working with women in their career transitions. And so that was like, okay, maybe I'm going to dabble into more leadership coaching, started to do that. And then I started to see all these women come to me and they were burnt out. And as we built up themselves in essence and who they were, it became clear of like, ooh, where I'm at work isn't really fulfilling who I am. And so a lot of them started their own business that was in that like boss babe movement of the 2010s. And then they realized really quickly that entrepreneurship is hard as well. And so I realized in all this is like, what if I could just go into like the heart of what the problem is and really work with leaders in corporations and founders too, right? And really build them up along the way. And of course, like most coaches, we all want to work with those driven, high achieving people because those are the people that get results. Because coaching is so action oriented that if you're not taking that action, especially between session, that's when we start to have some of those yellow flags of like, ooh, maybe this is more of a therapy situation, or maybe you're just needing more time to really digest what's going on and that's not quite the right fit. So yeah, that's kind of what led me to where I am today.
Lately I've been obsessing about this idea of micro skills. That there's that when somebody's a high achiever, they're not just a high achiever because they've got, drink their kale smoothie and they get up at 5 a.m. and they have all of the rituals, which they may have the rituals too. But when I look at an authentically high performer, like somebody who's been able to network into tough to get into networks or to be able to create things that the general public wants to buy, like holy amazing. It's not because they're doing one or two or three or even 10 things well. I've noticed with really high performers, they often have like these micro skills, and for example, I love that you're bringing this up because I don't think we've ever talked about this on the show ever before, that some people are not yet ready for the services of a high performance coach, right? Like they're not ready yet because coaching's not going to be supportive yet because there's some skills that they need to develop and those skills don't need to be facilitated with one-on-one time as a coach. That's my statement. Would you like to argue or add?
I completely agree wholeheartedly. You
Yeah,
really
okay.
have to be at the right season, the right time to get into coaching. And I will say a lot of the coaching I did over the years, because I was trained by someone who used to be a therapist. And this was like back in the 90s. And she realized like a lot of therapy wasn't moving people forward. And she was one of the first people that implemented coaching. And so a lot of my coaching over the years was really on the brink of both. Because you think about women in transition, that's a sensitive time, right?
Yeah.
But true, like high performance coaching is like you got to be locked in. You've got to be at a place where you've cleaned up some things in your health or you're just aware of them and you're able to really amplify who you are.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to have you on the show because you have so much experience as a coach. So, like, these skills, these micro skills that you might be looking for, maybe you look at it a slightly different way, but what are the tells that someone is ready to activate if they were to hire you as a coach? Like, what are some of the behaviors maybe that you look for that tell you, like, that person can activate a coaching relationship? Like, they are going to be better off, and the investment is a no brainer because they are going to definitely get ROI. What are some of the things you look for?
Yes, this is a great question because I'm really picky about it because I've been in coaching programs before and spent a lot of money and I didn't get onboarded well and I wasn't a great fit for it. And then you leave there feeling really disheartened and you feel worse about yourself. And so I'm, again, really picky about this. So when I'm on a consult with somebody or I'm just talking through somebody, I'm looking for a lot of things. I'm looking for how sharp they are and how easy they're able to communicate. I also kind of go off the beaten path, even though they're coming to me for career and leadership growth of, okay, tell me about your family. Like, what's your family life like? Tell me about your finances. Tell me about your health. And if there are cracks in those areas, especially big cracks, I'm like, ugh, okay, we need to maybe take some extra time, or maybe this isn't going to be a right fit. Because again, I've learned the hard way of seasons where I'm like, yeah, I'm going to amplify my career and amplify my business, but my marriage wasn't in a great spot. And the whole time it was just like, okay, like I had all this drama at home and like figuring all that out. And so I just wasn't able to be at a high performance place. So now I know what to look for. The other thing I'll say is that we, again, not only have a really robust like discovery call, if you will, but then an onboarding process. And we take our clients through a 2-month onboarding where we're giving them an assessment called Total Brain that I actually discovered when I went and got a brain scan. Because when I was in this like whole journey of like, okay, what's going on with me? I got this brain scan and they came out and they first gave me the total brain assessment. They're like, well, Lindsay, you have this, this, and this. And I was like, that's crap. And then they showed me the brain scan and I was like, okay, I can't deny what's on the brain scan. So I brought in Total Brain to my practice of like, okay, let's see what's underneath the hood here to see like what we can easily clean up. Because sometimes like say focus is bad. Okay, let's build some habits. Let's play some games so you can work on your focus versus, oh my gosh, you're testing for PTSD. Like, girl, you need to go work on that, do some EMDR, and then come back to me. Because again, if you're not in that space to move forward, you're just going to feel really stuck and it's just going to be harder. And nobody wants that.
You know, I think of it as being almost like handing the keys to a Ferrari to a 16-year-old.
Oh my
You know,
gosh.
right?
Yes.
Because it's not that the coaching is like bad or anything like that. It's just that if you give the keys to that Ferrari to somebody who's not trained in how to drive it, didn't do anything to earn the car, right? They're going to treat it differently and get a different performance result out of it than they would if they, started at the Honda Civic and, got to the next stage in their journey. That's so good. So these total brain scans, is that through the Amen Clinic by chance?
It is. Yes.
That's really cool. I'm jealous. I want to do that. I'm going to do that. That's the thing I'm going to do.
Well, I will say, the brain scan is interesting, but total brain in that assessment is very much foreshadows what's on the scan. So it bypasses the cost, the time, the pain for some people. Like when my daughter went and got it, she's big about her blood and all that stuff. So it's kind of a workaround to be able to see what's going on in your brain.
That's super cool. That's really, really cool. So when you're working with these high performers, a question I always get from people is like, where do you find clients? And you've been a coach for 11 years. A lot of coaches, in my experience anyway, are very hesitant to get support or help on how to get a client, and then they end up, it's almost like they're hoarding all of this amazing talent or hoarding all of this amazing education or access to assessments and tools, the very things that you invested, but you turned this into a business with like more than a decade longevity, which, dear listener, if you're not aware, that's freakishly successful. Like for a lot of businesses, they don't make it out of the first couple of years. I saw a stat for the coaching industry that something like 80% of coaching business founders don't make it to the end of the third year, right? And I can vouch for that one just because I've worked with so many coaches at the Coaches Plaza as well. So what would you say? Like, what's your no BS answer to somebody who's like, where do I get clients? Like, what would you say?
I would say it's a hard gig because there have been seasons in my business where I have a lot of clients and then the marketing, networking piece just goes away or it's not as strong. And what I've realized in time is for a lot of people, especially me, being a woman who still has a monthly cycle, and so I have ups and downs and having 2 kiddos, that it was a lot to ask for one person. And that's why I got to the point where I burned out. And so once I started to realize of like, okay, how can I like scale this in a way to bring on somebody to take the load off? And we're not just talking like a VA or anything like that, like somebody who can help move the needle forward. That's when things started to really open up for me because for so many years, it was just this messaging of like, you can do it, you can do all the things, and like, look at all these people making money, and I did it with as little help as possible, and I'm sipping martinis on the beach or whatever. And I kept just kind of like, what's wrong with me? And then I realized, actually, I'm there's nothing wrong with me. And two, I'm so in depth with my clients that when I've been in programs where they have been great marketers, they haven't been great coaches. And so I just want to offer that to people is that at some point it's going to get bigger than you, and you have to make that jump to being like, okay, now that I have a full client load or whatever it is, how can I bring on somebody else? So did I answer your question, Amanda?
No, I think it was just so honest and real, and I've learned how to market more in the latter years. I've been in business only 8 years, but the first 2 years it was a lot of word of mouth and referral based networking, and I learned this magic trick, which I'll share with y'all just free and clear. Whenever you meet someone cool, just ask them who's someone who'd be better off knowing me, right? Like, can you make an introduction? And so like that's how I built my business in the first couple of years is I started with literally 8 names on a post-it because at the time I personally was just so I'd been so heads down and butts up in a consulting role that had me traveling 46 weeks a year. I was friendly. I had a lot of friendly connections, but I didn't have a lot of, shall we say, like champions that, even if I changed my career or even if I changed, what I was going to be doing, that they would still be there. Right. So I had my little list of 8 and I started there and I was adding value to the relationship as we had because we were already friendly. And then I simply asked who would be better off knowing me. And that's how I was able to kick off the business. And then later I learned marketing skills. And I'll agree with you, like our programs are pretty bodacious, but our marketing isn't as shiny, right? In a lot of ways. So that's something that we're always working on. But I also think that it takes time to build a business. Like, so, okay, this is fun. What do you do now that's like so normal at year 11 that you wouldn't dare doing in the first year
Oh,
when it
girl.
comes to business?
Now I can go into a networking event and not know anybody, and it's nothing. Whereas at the beginning, I'd be like, oh my God, like, I don't know anyone. What do I say? La, la, la. And now it's just like you're in this pool and you've been in this pool of discomfort for so long that like you just stop caring.
Right. I think that's the thing. It's not that it really gets more comfortable exactly, because I still kind of get a little heavy when I'm going into a brand new room in a brand new space. A little bit of anxiety on my part, I suppose. But I agree with you completely. Like there's that skill of handling it. And like just like it is what it is, right? Like of course it's uncomfortable. I was listening to a Daily Fire by Brendan Burchard in the Growth Day app today, and he was like, why do we keep expecting things to not suck? And what he was talking about is like people that get mad at traffic that live in a big metro area. It's like you do realize it's like this every day, has been like this for the past 50 years, and will probably continue to be like this, and yet you're mad. And it's like, so same thing with the networking, I think. It's like, yeah, it's uncomfortable. It's never comfortable to meet new people.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
that's so good. So Lindsay, where are you headed? What are you working on next?
Yeah, so the big thing now is scaling what I've grown over the past 10 years. So, like I said, I realized around year 8, 9, 10 ish, it was a long time to come to this conclusion of like, okay, I got to scale this baby. Like, I can't just continue to do what I've been doing. And so, in that, of finding really great people who are willing to work at a startup level, because it's not easy work, right? And in that, like training along the way. So it's taking these pieces of my brain and being able to say, okay, like here's what we do with this client at this level, and here's what we do at this client at this level. Here's how we market this. This is what we say yes to. This is what we say no to. So it's just a lot of decisions that are coming my way, but it's also really exciting because even though I love coaching, there was a season when, again, around 8, 9, 10 years, I was just like, okay, I'm ready for something else. But I also loved what I did. And so now it's like I'm challenged all of the time, but in just totally different ways. And
That's
it's
so
weird to be like,
beautiful.
wow, I feel masterful as a coach. That's weird to be. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you've done a lot of it. So, I mean, at some point you got to claim that greatness, and it's and this surprised me too. Like and I agree with kind of hanging on to the former version. There's a great book called The E-Myth. Dear listener, that if you haven't read it, you must, because as a coach, we all start as a technician. Like we're the doer, we're the one that is in the call, we're in the relationship. And if you're going to grow the business beyond being a freelancer, then that means you need to have management. That means that you need to have vision. And it sounds like, Lindsay, you're activating this next level of vision for it's a brand you're building. It's no longer just Lindsay is a great coach.
Totally.
That's
You nailed it.
amazing.
Yeah.
What's I'm thinking about that guy that always says, "What's your dream?" So like, what is the vision of what you're building as the brand?
Yeah, so the big thing is doing leadership development differently, because so much of leadership development are these one-off trainings, or it's just like who you are at work as a leader. And again, as I've worked with so many people over the years, and in a way that was probably on paper a lot of life coaching with some leadership coaching in it, is like everything is intertwined, and the way that you're showing up at work relates to your health and to your relationships and to your finances, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
So I'm really big about that piece, and really big too about looking underneath the hood of things. So again, if it's like, I'm not a great communicator, maybe I just need to go take a class at Harvard Business Review and knock this out. And it's like, well, what's underneath that? Is it that your focus is bad? Your memory's bad? Is it that you have negative thinking? Is it that you have a lot of people? Like, I love like digging deep into that. And so as we move forward with my company called Trust and Leadership Coaching, it's really getting companies on board and looking at, okay, there's so much more than just these skills. It's underneath and who the person is. And two, getting the body on board. You know, we're a society that walks around with these brains, and it's like pump everything in the brain, but it's like you have just as many, you know, nerves in your body. And so if your body's not on board, you're going to continuously be held back.
Lindsay, how can people keep up with you? What's the best way to follow you?
Yeah, so my hangout lately has been LinkedIn. So if you just search Lindsay Preston on there, you should be able to find me.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Amazing. And hey, listener, all of Lindsay's links are below in the show notes, wherever you happen to be watching or listening. And if you love this episode, don't forget to hit subscribe first, but then grab the link and send it to 3 of your friends, because they need to hear this awesome story about the journey and what really, really matters in business. So go ahead and share it with them. And if you've been loving the show, one of the best things you can do for us is leave a review. Make it honest. You know, we're not going to ask you for the 5 stars. You know, I think we're worth that. But just in case, you know, an honest review is awesome, because it helps people to decide if they're going to spend time with us or not. We're going to be back with another episode very soon. But until then, make sure you do what matters.